going on, everyone? So, Chris Paul earlier today was waived by the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors were looking to try to make some type of moves and trade him instead of just kind of like letting him go for nothing. Talks about Paul George. They were very active in trying to acquire Paul George. Once Paul George ended up opting out, it was kind of like, okay, well, there goes that. And so they decided to, hey, let's just clear Chris Paul off of our books and kind of try to hit the reset button and regroup. So Chris Paul became a free agent, and the question was, where would he go? Who would he sign with, right? Immediately, the consensus was like the Spurs or the Lakers, right? Because his relationship with LeBron James, him and LeBron have wanted to play for years. The Lakers may end up being in the department for a point guard if they trade like D'Angelo Russell and Gabe Vincent and stuff. So it was kind of like, but he would have been so great alongside Victor Wembanyama. Like, that's the exact point guard that they need, at least momentarily, until they can find kind of the younger route or, make a trade for Darius Garland or whatever. Well, guess what? Chris Paul has officially signed with the San Antonio Spurs on a 1-year, $11 million deal. So he went for the bag, right? He wanted to go get the money, which was a concern, right? Because it's like, okay, San Antonio, they're not going to be contending for an NBA championship this year, most likely, unless the Spurs just start pulling off a bunch of like crazy trades. More likely, they're a team that's maybe they can make the play-in, get the right pieces. But Chris Paul, if you could get him, made all the sense in the world. Well, you obviously had to overpay for him, but he's still valued at like $11 million, even with his age and stuff. He's still a very good player. He's still excellent and really will fit this team in many ways. Obviously, there is the Spurs desperately need a point guard. There is also the, Victor Wembanyama will finally be able to have the game come easier to him and get somebody that is going to actively be trying to get him the basketball on a regular basis, which we'll dive into more here in a moment. But also what Chris Paul brings and just being able to help the young guys and player development and stuff. This is also why I almost feel like the Spurs now should go try to figure out some type of buyout for Juan Nunez, right? The second round draft pick that they got, the point guard, the Spanish point guard. Like Nunez basically is under contract technically between Real Madrid and Barcelona, but Real Madrid is not supposed to re-sign him. They're supposed to let him go play for Barcelona. I think Chris Paul would do wonders for him because he is looked at as like this prodigy point guard. And so if he really is, Chris Paul, look at like Dennis Schroeder at SGA in particular, because, SGA is arguably a top 5 guy now. He praises to this day Chris Paul and what Chris Paul did in helping him in his game, right? Chris Paul as just a mentor for this young Spurs team, I think is tremendous. A lot of Spurs fans I see throwing out that they really want, Stephon Castle to be a point guard and, he played point guard, he can be the point guard and all that stuff, right? Well, if you are going to mold him into a point guard, an NBA level point guard, because there's a big difference between high school and, playing for, college and all this other stuff, and then the actual NBA at the point guard level, right? So to me, Chris Paul, I think him mentoring Castle and being able to show him and break things down, and I just think it's invaluable, right? Chris Paul is going to bring a lot more than that $11 million contract. And if you're the Spurs, it's a placeholder for you. It's perfect, right? Like, this is a win-win across the board for the Spurs because they get a veteran guy that can come in. They get a guy that's going to make things easier for Victor Wembanyama. They're going to get a mentor. They're going to get an adult in the room. They're going to get a competitor. You couldn't ask for a better option for a young Spurs team, a guy that gets to come in and be the adult and help these young guys grow and develop. This is going to be huge for Jones. This is going to be huge for Vats. This is going to be huge for Castle. This is going to be huge for Victor, right? Like, across the board. But this is also why I almost feel like if you're the Spurs, because Chris Paul, right, you do have him for the year. Who's to say he signs again next year, right? And then now you're bringing in Juan, and it's like, okay, well, Chris Paul would have been so valuable for him. So if you're the Spurs, I just think now, if you didn't get Chris Paul, I would say no, right? Like just leave him, ride it out the year and, and then bring him in after. But now that Chris Paul's coming, Chris Paul could do wonders for that kid who is already looked at as, a true point guard and playmaker. There are very few true point guards in the history of the league as good as Chris Paul. I mean, you can make an argument he's the best, like, true traditional point guard. Him and, guys like Isaiah Thomas and stuff. Magic was 6'9". He was the playmaker, point guard, greatest point guard ever. But talking about like in the sense of like small package traditional point guard, right? Like Chris Paul is up there. And so I just think that these young guards and point guards that the Spurs have could just learn so incredibly much from Chris Paul. And I just think you should take as much advantage of this as you can. Because what if next season Chris Paul goes, all right, I got another year or two in me. Let me go try to get the ring. Right now, he might be looking at it as, I'm not going to get more than $11 million anywhere else. It's vet minimum or $11 million. Let me go get this last little payday from the Spurs. Then, next year I'll go and go get go try to get the ring, right? Like, so to me, it's take advantage now while you can. But last little points of note is the Victor Wembanyama side of things, right? One of the biggest frustrations last year watching the Spurs was how many times Victor Wembanyama would have established position. I mean, there were times where he'd be wide open. I mean, literally wide open, no one around. And it was like he wasn't even on the court. He would just get completely phased out at times. And he's by far your best player. The guy was absolutely special. You can't miss him. The guy's 11 feet tall. Like, how do you not get your guy the ball? You're not going to have that problem with Chris Paul. You're going to have a guy in Chris Paul that is going to do everything in his power to make Victor Wembanyama the best version of himself as possible. Victor is never going to have it easier, right? Chris Paul just making sure he gets the ball in his spots, in his favorite positions, right? Victor, when he establishes position and works hard to get that mismatch or get that advantage, it's not going to go to waste. Chris Paul is going to recognize that immediately and be able to get him the basketball. I mean, the free buckets that Victor's going to get just because, Chris Paul is going to draw attention and be able to, lob it up to him or just kick it as he's cutting. The pick and roll actions with him and Victor Wembanyama, the pick and pop actions, right? I mean, the possibilities are endless for what Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama can provide for this team. This is huge in my opinion for the San Antonio Spurs. And I think that San Antonio Spurs made the best move that they probably could have made outside of, if they can go trade for a Darius Garland or something, which they still can. Right? Like if they wanted to, and Darius Garland does become available because Donovan Mitchell does sign an extension, they can still go trade for Garland. And again, look at what Chris Paul did for SGA. SGA to this day talks about it. Right? So if he could do that for SGA, what can he do for Darius Garland? I'm not even saying that he can turn Darius Garland into SGA, but Darius Garland was an all-star level point guard. Right? People forget how good Darius Garland was before Donovan Mitchell came and kind of threw a wrench in everything. Right? So to have Chris Paul bringing him in, I just think it's just there's not very many moves that they could make right now that would be better than that because of the impact across the board for Victor, for your young guys, for that locker room, and just helping with development. This was huge. And Chris Paul, he gets a little payday for doing the services. I think that this is just a win-win all along. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think yes, this is huge. This is massive. The Spurs really got themselves an excellent, veteran point guard that's going to be able to come and kind of change the tides for the Spurs a little bit here and help them grow and develop. Do you think no, stay away? They should have, went somebody else. They, should go get Garland. They should just stick with Castle. How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are. Love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.